Imagine cruising down a California freeway in the dead of night, the hum of the engine your only companion. Suddenly, flashing lights pierce the darkness, a routine traffic stop or so it seems. But as officers approach, they uncover a scene so macabre it defies belief. The driver, Randy Kraft, appears calm, almost indifferent. Beside him, the lifeless body of a young Marine, trousers askew, wrists bearing the telltale signs of restraint. This chilling discovery was just the beginning. In the trunk, photographs of young men in various stages of undress, a coded list hinting at unspeakable acts and personal belongings of the vanished. Kraft, later dubbed the Scorecard Killer, is believed to have orchestrated a reign of terror spanning over a decade, with victims possibly exceeding 60. His method: luring unsuspecting hitchhikers, plying them with alcohol and sedatives, then subjecting them to unimaginable torment before discarding their bodies like refuse along the highways. Yet, despite the gravity of his crimes, Kraft's name remains shrouded in obscurity, his atrocities overshadowed by other infamous killers. Welcome to True Crime Alibi, the channel where the shadows of the past meet the cold reality of forensic truth. We take a deep, investigative look into some of the darkest cases in history, exposing the horrors that lurk behind the headlines. If you're fascinated by true crime stories that uncover hidden details and explore the minds of the most dangerous killers, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Now, let's uncover the shocking case of Randy Kraft, the Scorecard Killer. Born on March 19, 1945 in Long Beach, California, Randy Kraft was the fourth child and only son of Opal Lee and Harold Herbert Kraft. In 1948, the family relocated to Midway City in Orange County, settling into a modest home that Harold renovated from a former Women's Army Corps dormitory. Despite financial constraints, Opal balanced multiple jobs, including roles as a seamstress and school cook, while Harold worked as a production operative at Douglas Aircraft Company. The family was actively involved in the Westminster First Presbyterian Church, with Opal serving as chairman of the Deacons Committee. Academically, Kraft excelled. His intelligence was evident early on, leading him to attend accelerated classes at 17th Street Junior High School. At Westminster High School, he co-founded the Westminster World Affairs Club and was known for his conservative political views, even aspiring to become a U.S. Senator. However, beneath this facade, Kraft grappled with his sexual identity. While he occasionally dated girls, he privately acknowledged his homosexuality, a secret he kept from his family and peers. In 1963, Kraft graduated 10th in his class and enrolled at Claremont Men's College to study economics. During his time there, he experienced a significant shift in his political beliefs, transitioning from a staunch Republican to an active supporter of liberal causes. He participated in demonstrations supporting the Vietnam War and campaigned for Republican candidate Barry Goldwater in 1964. However, by his second year he abandoned his conservative ideology, embracing more liberal views. It was also during this period that Kraft began exploring his sexuality more openly, frequenting gay bars and engaging in relationships with men. In 1966 he was arrested for lewd conduct after propositioning an undercover police officer in Huntington Beach. However, no charges were filed due to his clean record. Despite his academic prowess, Kraft's focus waned in his senior year, leading to delayed graduation in February 1968. Shortly after, Kraft joined the U.S. Air Force, where he rose to the rank of Airman First Class and supervised the painting of test planes at Edwards Air Force Base. In 1969 he came out to his family, receiving mixed reactions. His father reacted with anger while his mother was more understanding. Later that year, Kraft disclosed his sexual orientation to his superiors and was subsequently discharged on medical grounds. Following his discharge, he returned to his parents' home and worked as a bartender, while also enrolling at Long Beach State University to pursue a teaching credential. During this time he entered into a relationship with Jeff Graves, a fellow student, marking the beginning of a more openly gay lifestyle. Randy Kraft's descent into a life of heinous crimes began in the early 1970s, marking the onset of a series of murders that would baffle law enforcement for over a decade. His victims, predominantly young men aged between 13 and 35, often hailed from vulnerable backgrounds: hitchhikers, military personnel, or individuals he encountered in bars. Kraft's modus operandi was both calculated and sinister. He would offer his victims a ride, sometimes under the pretense of companionship or assistance, and then incapacitate them using a combination of alcohol and sedatives, particularly diazepam. Once rendered defenseless, these young men were subjected to brutal acts of sexual assault and torture. The extent of the torture varied, but many victims bore signs of severe abuse. Some had been burned with a car cigarette lighter on sensitive areas such as the genitals, chest, and face. Others suffered from the insertion of foreign objects into their bodies, and in certain cases, victims were emasculated or dismembered. The majority met their end through strangulation, asphyxiation, or bludgeoning. After death, Kraft often discarded their bodies along California's highways, leading to his association with the moniker the Freeway Killer. A particularly chilling aspect of Kraft's crimes was the discovery of a coded list upon his arrest, referred to by investigators as the Scorecard. This document contained cryptic references believed to correspond to his victims, suggesting that Kraft meticulously documented his gruesome acts. For instance, entries like EDM are thought to refer to Edward Daniel Moore, while Vince M likely denotes Vincent Mestas. Some entries hinted at the nature of the torture inflicted or the locations where victims were last seen, such as Marine Head BP, believed to reference a decapitated Marine last seen hitchhiking towards Buena Park. Some of Kraft's notable victims were Edward Daniel Moore, 20, a Marine stationed at Camp Pendleton. Moore was last seen on December 24, 1972. His body was discovered beside the 405 freeway in Seal Beach on December 26. Moore had been bound, beaten, and garroted. Disturbingly, a sock was found inserted into his rectum, and his body bore numerous bite marks. Kevin Clark Bailey, 17, on April 9, 1973, Bailey's mutilated body was found in Huntington Beach. He had been emasculated and sodomized prior to his death. The brutality of the crime shocked the community and added urgency to the ongoing investigation. Ronnie Jean Weeb, 20, disappearing on July 28, 1973, Weeb's body was found 2 days later near an on-ramp of the 405 freeway. He had been strangled, and his body exhibited signs of torture, including burn marks likely inflicted by a car cigarette lighter. Keith Davin Crotwell, 18, on March 29, 1975, Crotwell and a friend accepted a ride from a man driving a black and white Ford Mustang in Long Beach. After consuming alcohol provided by the driver, Crotwell's friend lost consciousness. Upon regaining awareness, he found himself alone, with Crotwell missing. On May 8, 1975, Crotwell's decapitated head was discovered near the Long Beach Marina. The rest of his body was never recovered. Witnesses later identified Kraft's vehicle as matching the description of the car seen that night. Mark Howard Hall, 22, a Navy corpsman, Hall was last seen hitchhiking on New Year's Eve, 1975. His body was found on January 3, 1976, in a ravine near the Ortega Highway. Hall had been sexually assaulted, and his body bore ligature marks, indicating he had been bound and strangled. Scott Michael Hughes, 18, Hughes, a Marine, was last seen on April 16, 1978, in Anaheim. His body was discovered the following day alongside the 405 freeway. Hughes had been strangled, and his body exhibited signs of extensive blunt force trauma. Roland Gerald Young, 23, Young disappeared on June 11, 1978, after spending an evening at a San Diego bar. His body was found the next day near a freeway in San Diego County. Young had been strangled, and his body showed evidence of sexual assault. Richard Allen Keith, 20, a Marine stationed at El Toro Air Station. Keith was last seen on July 6, 1978. His body was discovered the following day in Moulton Parkway, Laguna Hills. Keith had been strangled, and his body bore signs of sexual assault and torture. Michael Joseph Inderbiaton, 21, Inderbiaton was last seen on November 18, 1978, in Long Beach. His body was found the same day in the San Bernardino Mountains. Inderbiaton had been strangled, and his body exhibited signs of sexual assault. Donald Harold Crizzle, 20, Crizzle disappeared on June 16, 1979, after leaving a bar in Westminster. His body was discovered the next day near the Ortega Highway. Crizzle had been strangled, and his body showed evidence of sexual assault and torture. Robert Wyatt Loggins Jr., 19, Loggins, a Marine, was last seen on August 23, 1980, in Irvine. His body was found the following day near the El Toro Marine Base. Loggins had been strangled, and his body bore signs of sexual assault and mutilation. Eric Herbert Church, 21, Church was last seen on March 13, 1983, hitchhiking near Orange County. His body was discovered the next day along the I-5 freeway. Church had been strangled, and his body exhibited signs of sexual assault and torture. Jeffrey Allen Nelson, 18, Nelson disappeared on February 11, 1983, after leaving a friend's house in Buena Park. His body was found 2 days later in the Cleveland National Forest. Nelson had been strangled, and his body showed evidence of sexual assault and mutilation. Roger James DeVole Jr., 20 DeVole was last seen on July 11, 1982 in Long Beach. His body was discovered the following day near the Ortega Highway. DeVole had been strangled, and his body exhibited signs of sexual assault and torture. Terry Lee Gambrell, 25 Gambrell, a Marine, was last seen on May 14, 1983, hitchhiking near El Toro Marine Base. His body was found in Kraft's vehicle during a routine traffic stop on the same day. Gambrell had been strangled, and his body bore signs of sexual assault. In the early hours of May 14, 1983, California Highway Patrol officers Michael Sterling and Sergeant Michael Howard observed a Toyota Celica driving erratically on Interstate 5 in the Mission Viejo area of Orange County. Suspecting the driver was under the influence, they signaled for the vehicle to pull over. The driver, Randy Kraft, complied, exiting the car with an open beer bottle, which he promptly discarded. Notably, his jeans were unbuttoned, a detail that would later prove significant. Officer Sterling conducted a field sobriety test, which Kraft failed, leading to his arrest for driving under the influence. Meanwhile, Sergeant Howard approached the passenger side and discovered the lifeless body of a young man, partially covered by a jacket. The victim's hands were bound with a shoelace, and a ligature mark was evident around his neck. This individual was later identified as 25-year-old Marine Terry Lee Gambrell, stationed at El Toro Marine Base. The immediate discovery of a deceased passenger escalated the situation from a routine DUI arrest to a potential homicide investigation. A thorough search of Kraft's vehicle unveiled a trove of incriminating evidence. Prescription drugs and alcohol. Officers found various prescription medications, including tranquilizers like lorazepam and diazepam, alongside open containers of alcohol. This combination suggested a method of incapacitating victims. Bloodstains. The passenger seat and carpet were heavily stained with blood. Notably, Gambrell had no open wounds, indicating the blood belonged to other individuals. Photographs. An envelope containing over 50 Polaroid images of young men, many appearing unconscious or deceased, was discovered. Some photos depicted victims in Kraft's living room, identifiable by the distinct furniture and decor. Scorecard list. Hidden beneath the trunk's carpet was a handwritten list of 61 cryptic entries, later dubbed the scorecard. Each notation, such as EDM or Marine Head BP, was believed to correspond to a specific victim or crime scene. Following the vehicle search, authorities obtained a warrant to search Kraft's Long Beach residence. Inside, they found personal belongings of several young men reported missing or murdered over the past decade. Fibers from a rug in Kraft's home matched those found on victim Scott Hughes. Additionally, undeveloped film rolls contained images of victims Eric Church and Roger DeVole inside Kraft's car, with visible ligature marks on DeVole's neck. On May 16, 1983, Kraft was formally charged with the murder of Terry Lee Gambrell. As the investigation progressed, evidence linked him to multiple other homicides. By September 8, 1983, Kraft faced additional charges for 15 more murders, along with counts of sodomy and emasculation. The trial commenced on September 26, 1988 in Orange County, presided over by Judge Donald A. McCartan. Over 160 witnesses testified, and more than 1,000 exhibits were presented as evidence. The prosecution's case was bolstered by physical evidence. Bloodstains, hair and fiber samples from Kraft's car and residence matched those of several victims. Photographic evidence. Images of victims, both alive and deceased, were found in Kraft's possession. Personal belongings. Items owned by the victims were recovered from Kraft's home. Kraft's defense argued the circumstantial nature of the evidence and highlighted initial investigative missteps, such as the attribution of some murders to other known serial killers like Patrick Kearney and William Bonin. Despite these efforts, the jury found Kraft guilty on all counts. On August 11, 1989, he was sentenced to death. As of 2024, Randy Kraft remains on death row at San Quentin State Prison, continuing to deny responsibility for the crimes. The true extent of Kraft's crimes remains uncertain. While he was convicted of 16 murders, entries on the scorecard suggest there may be up to 67 victims. Efforts to identify all of Kraft's victims continue. Notably, in November 2023, investigators identified a John Doe from 1974 as Michael Ray Schlicht, a 20-year-old from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, believed to be one of Kraft's early victims. The meticulous investigation into Randy Kraft's activities underscores the dedication of law enforcement to seek justice for victims, no matter how much time has passed. If you found this deep dive into the Randy Kraft case informative, please like this video and subscribe to True Crime Alibi for more in-depth explorations of complex criminal cases. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe all entries on Kraft's scorecard will eventually be deciphered?